1. Welcome to the School of Hard Thoughts podcast. For once, I am announcing first, or maybe twice. My name is Green, and I love being here with my good buddy.
Welcome to the show. My name's Adrian Davis.
Oh man, another great podcast coming to you. What is this? Episode 13?
Yes, Lucky 13.
That's actually my favorite number.
Really?
Yeah. It's never,
Mine is 21.
13 has always been very kind to me. Well, Adrian, there is no shortage of things to talk about.
That's probably because we took a week off.
We
and
did
the news
take a
cycle
week
was
off.
like, I don't know, down to like 3 seconds.
I know. It's a little bit maddening, when you try to keep up, because we do this as a hobby. I mean, School of Hard Thoughts podcast is brought to you by no one but Adrian and Green.
Right, but we do appreciate the people here at Famous Sam's at Golf Links
Absolutely.
Cold, 7129 East Golf Links Road. Best place in the world to watch sports, especially football. They're watching college football right now. They got college basketball going on.
I'm watching
I
Louisville,
even
North
see-
Carolina right
yeah,
now.
I even see a little bit of soccer over there
What?
on one of the TVs.
I'm only going to be
Yeah.
half watching this because as hipster trash, I'm forced to like soccer.
I understand.
You don't.
I don't understand, but I understand.
You accept me for who I am.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
So anyway, it's a great place to watch what's left of the football season. So
And there's not too much left as at the point of this broadcast or recording.
right, but
it
lots
should be
of live
fun.
music, good drink specials, and all that stuff. So come on down.
Come on down. You're going to like what you see. I guarantee it. Let me mention something here, Adrian. We are podcasting from Tucson, Arizona, which is about a 40-minute drive from the border.
The Romulan border.
I don't know which direction that one is on the.
I think it's that way.
Yeah, on the Z-axis, I think. We are.
But see, the funny thing about that, we're joking around, but that brings us into the concept of three-dimensional space, which we will be talking about later.
I cannot wait for that because I just read an article that says three-dimensional space might not actually be real except for our perception. There's an
So
article.
we're living in 2D.
The entire universe is actually 2D, but we perceive it in 3D because our brain has to make sense of.
They were talking about that
Of stuff.
on a podcast, and I just turned it off. Okay,
Well-
I didn't turn it off. I tuned it out.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, a podcast needs your likes and hits, but no, we are close to the border, and I'm sorry, both me and you are married, not to each other.
But that's legal.
It is, but I don't know what the future holds for us, Adrian. But we're both married to beautiful women. We both work and live in the wonderful hamlet of Tucson, Arizona.
It's a hamlet now?
Yes,
I thought it was a pueblo.
it's the naked Pueblo. I mean, old Pueblo is its nickname. And I have been looking all over for a crisis. The huge crisis that we've been supposedly experiencing. And the only crisis I really saw was on the way here today. I saw a couple in a screaming match at a bus stop. Neither one of them were Mexican.
Yeah, well, so to give it a little bit of context, I mean, everybody knows, but just in case you don't know, I believe it was last Tuesday?
Right around that. Yeah.
Yeah. The President of the United States actually had was it his first Oval Office address?
He talks so much, you would think it would be his 50th.
Yeah, but
He hasn't really
doesn't-
done any official
he
talking.
talks a lot, which means he goes to like rallies and he tweets.
Opera houses.
And he'll talk from the White House lawn in front of Marine One purposely,
Right.
So that nobody gets what? What did you say?
They can't.
I gotta go.
They can't contest him.
I'm indicted. What?
No, I'm busy. I can't hear you. These planes are very loud.
Yeah. So, but he doesn't do a lot of official stuff. There haven't been a great many official press conferences.
Right.
And I think this was the first Oval Office address.
Right.
And he addressed the nation, and everybody was. There was a lot of trepidation about it, but for some of us who are worried about the fate of our democracy,
Or the
were
Republic,
worried-
yeah.
Well, the fate of our
The
our way
future,
of life.
the future of America.
There were a lot of us who were like, if he declares a state of emergency to get the funding for the wall, then we are one step away from the same things that happened in democracies like Germany prior to Hitler.
Oh, absolutely.
Prior to Stalin and prior to.
Well, I mean, if you go even further back into, Athenian and Roman eras, which were more akin to what we have today, representative government and stuff like that. That's how a lot of Caesars and leaders at the time would kind of wash everybody to a certain way. They'd be like, hey, listen, we all got to unite under a single enemy, and by the way, here's some free bread and a circus.
Right, and it always was about some type of threat.
Exactly.
It was always about some type of fear. So
usually from foreign, and it was never very few times was it an internal threat. It always was like, well, we need to, we need to push through Prussia or this area. And, 90% of the time was for resource allocation.
Yeah. So one of the things that, in the aftermath of the address, which was only 8 minutes long, and he didn't declare a state of emergency, he talked about there being a crisis on the border. And there were actually live fact checks at the time.
Provided both by CNN and Fox.
And Fox and some new media like David Pakman.
Yep.
They were doing live, or at least directly after fact checking. And there were a lot of factual errors, but here's what it boiled down to for me. He says there's a crisis. He's still leaning towards a state of emergency.
Correct.
Which basically could lead to martial law.
Yes, it could.
So, what's the crisis? And everybody credible has said, actually immigration, legal and illegal, is going down. It's costing us less. People are leaving more than they're coming in. And so what I wanted to understand wasn't the specific facts of, our was there truly less immigration, or
sure,
my conundrum is how people can't see the logic or illogic of the claim that there's a crisis. So if something was bad,
okay,
and over the last 10 years it's continuously gotten better,
right,
and it doesn't matter. In fact, actually, Trump could use this as a political point. He could say, you know what?
And we won't even charge you for that, Mr. President.
Right.
You can use this for free. Just come on our podcast.
He could have said, we still have some problems down at the border, and I would like to have a wall, and I don't like the way Democrats are acting politically, and I would like you, the American people, to get behind me.
Sure.
But we have done a good job. I'm doing way better than whether it was true or not that it was because of him. He could say he could use those facts and say we're doing way better than we did before, but there's still problems.
Right.
But that's not the way he did it, and that's not the way his supporters are looking at it.
Well, and that's the thing.
And what my question is, and I know it's taken me a long time to get there.
It's okay, it's a podcast. We got a lot of time to
In the face
build.
of facts.
Okay.
In the face of facts. It's a fact that immigration is down. Illegal immigration.
Since 2015, it's gone down.
Undocumented,
and I can actually bring up, it's the Federation for American Immigration Reform that compiles all those numbers, and that has seen a steady decline since 2015.
Right. That's a fact. And it's a verifiable fact. It's a verifiable fact on both right and left.
Math doesn't lie.
Right. So that tells us that things used to be bad, but they're not as bad now. So how can you have a crisis? What's new? What new is happening?
So what I think he's pandering to, and that's what it is. It's a pandering kind of technique that, like you said, some of these world leaders from, let's say, the 30s and 20s and stuff like that used to use with their populace. It's stirring up unwarranted fear.
Right.
Fear of impurity, I guess you could say. And I think a lot of his supporters, which happen to be anywhere from 30 years old to 70 years old white people. By the way, if you're not watching on YouTube and you can't tell from my voice, I'm a white person.
He's kind of white.
Mostly white. I got a ginger beard and a bald head. As white bread as it comes, sir. But I think there is a legitimate fear in a lot of America about like, oh, well, we're no longer going to be the majority. There was a comedian, I'm not going to say his name because he's fallen from grace, but he had this great bit about how like a white American male can be the only person to go to Africa and be like, wow, look at all the minorities here. I'm the only majority in this whole airport.
Right.
So
yeah, it's...
And for people who that matters, which unfortunately there's a lot of people in this country that skin color still matters to them for some reason. I think they're legitimately scared.
Right, but see, that's not what I'm hearing from the right. I absolutely believe, you and I have talked about this off air, that's the theory. However, that's not what I'm hearing from the other side. What I hear from the other side is talking points. What I hear is, they'll use anecdotal stories. They'll say, what about this young lady that got killed by an illegal immigrant? What about this police officer that was murdered by an illegal immigrant? And so it's kind of hard to argue against that because those are tragedies. Those are tragedies.
Sure.
And those are things that shouldn't have happened.
Right.
However, that doesn't justify calling it a crisis when things are actually better.
No, what is a crisis is the increase in gun violence among adolescents, school shootings and sex trafficking and stuff like that. Like that, I would consider a legitimate crisis because those things are on the increase.
And so I think it comes down to one of the pieces that we kind of breezed over is that the reason that this is happening is that there is a stalemate and there's been a partial government shutdown because of it.
Are you still getting paid?
I don't work for the government,
Me
so
neither.
I'm still getting paid.
Oh.
Right then in that second, I said that laughingly,
Right.
and that's disgusting. I'm sorry.
You're such a flippant.
Because there's I think it's something
lot-
like 1 million people right now that aren't getting paid.
A lot of people that we love and
Yeah.
care for do
Yeah,
work for the government, and so
there are so many other impacts. Like I wouldn't want to fly right now.
Well, no, because the TSA employees, if you haven't been following the news, they're starting to have to use all of their accrued sick leave and stuff, and they're just not showing up to work. The FDA is no longer inspecting food. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Isn't that... Okay, so when people say we need less government, we need less regulation, if you want to go back to when things were deregulated, back in, let's say Prohibition era, when people were making bathtub hooch.
That might actually not be a good time period because they regulated the shit out of one thing.
Right, well, exactly. But that caused a lot of blowback, with the speakeasies and stuff. And so you did have, of course, they tried to supremely regulate something that Americans were like, no, this is part of our genetic makeup. We can't
Which
just.
it is.
It is for a lot of.
I can attest to that.
For a lot of Celtic people.
But
But what you started seeing was a lot of poisoning cases, a lot of blindness coming from arsenic because there was all of a sudden no more regulation and things people were consuming into their bodies.
yeah.
And once you stop having that regulation, you're going to start finding more foodborne illnesses.
Right.
But hands down, you can mark it on your calendar whenever you heard this podcast. If this shutdown and the FDA isn't inspecting food, you're going to see a lot more recalls coming up, more than we have already.
Yeah. And there were already some recalls before the shutdown.
Yeah.
I mean,
I haven't ate lettuce in 6
I was about
months.
to say, it's been a while since lettuce has been safe. So, anyway, it comes down to the reason that they're not funding the government and the reason that they're having this budget battle is that Trump made a campaign promise that he was going to build a wall.
And he promised to have Mexico pay for it.
Right. That was part of it. But I'm going to continue, And the reason I'm going to continue to do this is so that I can circle back. But I'm going to continue to give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay. One of the things he said last week was, I never really meant that Mexico was going to pay for the war.
Well, of course not.
What I meant was that we were going to use trade deals and tariffs and whatever, and
Well, then
indirectly
why didn't he say that?
because he says so many different things.
Yeah, can't keep track of it.
But anyway, the point is that was one of his campaign promises, so he's trying to fulfill that. And as a supporter of him, you should be like, yeah, okay. But here's the thing: the wall, which since it's been proposed, has been derided by anybody who knows anything about engineering,
Right.
about walls in general,
Or ecology.
about the fact that the border itself is not a straight line. It doesn't go straight across. It's not completely flat.
Private property ownership.
There's private property ownership. There's tribal lands. There are
let's-
geographical features. There's the Rio Grande. So
Yeah.
when you look at it overall, and the fact that we've had fencing in place and
And I actually have a stat on that.
physical barriers in
Yes,
place
yes.
for years, and they
the physical
have,
barriers do make a difference.
Right, they do make a difference, but a grand wall will not work.
The Mongolians got through China's eventually.
It will not work in three-dimensional space. It just won't.
The 3 dimensions.
This is where I'm bringing it back to three-dimensional space.
Love you for this.
If
Go ahead.
setting aside the moral implications,
Right.
which there are a lot of people who don't understand why there are moral implications.
Because these are human beings, maybe? I don't know.
Just the fact that we are supposed to be the country of bring us your huddled masses, and we're going to put a force field up.
Well, and everybody's like, well, what do we got to do? We got to stop this influx of people somehow. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure the freaking Algonquins and Pawnee said the same thing.
Right, but and not only that, it's
Those were Native American nations, by the way.
so it comes down to he wants a down payment on the wall. He wants $5 billion set aside directly for wall funding.
Did you?
And
did you?
he's not budging on it, and neither are the Democrats. So
Well,
right now,
okay, so
we've got a bunch of people who aren't getting paid. We have
do want to say something, and you know me, I'm neither left or right. I'm forward. You know,
that
even
would
in
almost
a.
sound like you were progressive.
I might be. I just might be. I'm a science and logic guy.
Right.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and say we live in three-dimensional space just for the sake of this podcast.
Okay.
In a universe of infinite directions to go to, why should you only be bound by two sides, two directions? You know, that's always been my outlook on the whole bipartisan two-party system. But when you were saying that, like, you know, the Democrats haven't budged, Democrats actually have approved $1.3 billion, which is a shit ton of money. Oh, NSFW, by the way.
You know, they should know that.
If you're listening to episode
They should know that
13,
by now.
put your
If
kids to bed.
if you come in on episode 13
Thank
and
you.
don't know what's going on, wow, thank you. Welcome new
Thank you.
listeners.
Yeah, exactly. But we do curse a little once in a while.
Yes, we do.
Because it's fun and we're good at it. Democrats actually approved $1.3 billion for border security. People, I think, nowadays are numb to how big a billion is. Okay, so 1 million seconds is about 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 31 and a half years.
That's because we've grown to such a high GDP that $1 billion in the grand scheme of things
Doesn't seem
is
like-
not a lot. It isn't a lot of money for
on the GDP.
on the GDP and for the national budget. But so here are the arguments that I keep getting from,
Okay.
because I've unfortunately had this debate several times in the past week or so on social media, and I should have been doing homework.
You're such an antagonist.
I'm a dick.
That's
Anyway,
okay.
the arguments are, again, the anecdotal stories about people getting killed. And that's a really good argument, because even though scientifically and in the
Statistics.
Right, but in the realm of logical arguments,
Okay.
it's not an anecdotal argument isn't a good argument unless it's exemplary of the numbers. So it's
right
not,
there with false positives,
Right, right.
and yes,
but it's hard because it tugs at the heartstrings. It tugs at the, that girl got killed by a fucking illegal, and it's
very
like, well,
emotionally driven individuals.
so how do you fight against that? And then the other one is, I get friends who throw all these studies about walls. Well, no, actually, before they even go to studies
and
about
they're-
walls, they just say, well, if walls aren't good, then why do, let's tear the walls down at celebrities' houses and stuff. I'm like, that's a completely different problem.
Yes,
It's
obviously.
that's the whole apples and oranges thing.
Right, or no apples and dragons. It's not even another fruit.
And it's like we're talking about something very specific. We're talking about a two-dimensional wall on a border that isn't straight, that isn't flat,
Right.
that isn't in a geographic 3,000 mile area that we can just do that, and then hope that it's not defeated.
Sure.
There are some places where it's going to be physically impossible or cost prohibitive to
Right.
build this way. So, how do you argue with people who are like, oh, well, we should just tear down all walls? It's like, that's a fifth grader's argument, to be honest.
Well, and then that's who we're dealing with. And unfortunately, that's the maturity
And
level.
again,
of a
I
lot of
want to
people.
give them the benefit of doubt. These are people I know, and they're not fifth graders. They're accomplished people. A lot of them have, well, not a lot of them have degrees, to be honest. But some of them have degrees, and
But they're operating and
educated.
living in America,
Yes.
paying
Yes,
their
they're
bills,
smart
paying their
people,
taxes.
and
don't need
and
helmets to.
they continue to believe these things that just aren't true. And not only do they believe the things that aren't true, but they come up with excuses and arguments and reasons to.
You know why they do this? Because it makes them feel better. And every organism is trying to achieve a state of homeostasis.
My problem with it is, if we're ever going to get to a point where we say, look, the left wing and the right wing are on the same fucking bird.
Yeah,
They're all
amen.
getting money from big pharma. They're all getting money from big oil.
Tobacco,
It
agriculture.
doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, except for like some of these new congressmen and especially congresswomen.
Ooh, we're gonna talk about.
No,
We're
we're
gonna talk
not.
about that.
No, we're not. I want to remain married. Thank you. Anyway, but anyway, we're with the exception of those few, we're talking about people who are corrupt. They're corrupt.
Career corrupt.
Yeah, they're corrupt, and
They made a career out of it.
it's on both sides. But we're never going to get to a point where we're like, let's get rid of these people and get people who are actually going to represent our interests if we continue to argue amongst ourselves illogically.
So-
like, I don't have a problem having a debate with somebody, but if something is blue, something is blue.
Right. Justice Ginsburg, which, by the way, there's no cancer. They tested her. They ran some screening. She's doing great.
Okay.
She's
I
going to be
thought they
around
had
for a while.
removed, but they removed
did.
some.
Yeah,
Okay.
they did have to go in and slice
You got to
and
be
dice
careful
a bit.
with saying there's no cancer. There's
no cancer left.
There's no detectable cancer right
Left.
now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But she's in remission. She's doing great. And she was quoted earlier this week in saying that I'm going to paraphrase here because I'm going to that you should value the community over yourself.
Yeah, and I think it comes from a place of, like you, believing in science and logic and math and.
By the way, I'm not good at math.
Yeah, I'm horrible at math, but there are other people who are good at it that say, hey, yeah, immigration's going down.
And they will show you A plus B, and they'll give you the facts.
By the way, they do pay taxes, and no, they don't take out welfare and food stamps. They don't get that. They're not eligible for that.
Right.
And you actually hear these numbers too. So part of it is you're arguing for your tribe.
Right.
And then part of it is disinformation from the leaders of your tribe. And there's, talk about 4,000 terrorists at the border. And
Okay, so let's get into some numbers
yeah.
then. Because in response to the president's, I guess we call it a speech, I guess we'll call it an address, he was on the TV for an amount of time and said some words. And of course, the state-ran news company that he funds, and it's funded him, Fox News. Go ahead, send your emails over to School of Hard Thoughts Podcast. We love your emails. We get thousands of them every day. See what I did just there?
I saw that, yeah.
Taking a cue from our glorious leader.
It's huge.
It's huge amounts
The
of
biggest
emails.
podcast ever.
We have we don't even do the emails, and we get all these emails. Okay, so it came up a reporter, and I'm not going to say the name because I'm not a hater, and also I don't have it written down. But it was a stat that said each illegal immigrant costs Americans or Americans about 80 grand. And so I did some digging. I'm like, wow, I've known people that came up illegally, and I've seen how they live, and I know, and this might have been 2 generations ago, but I see their family, I see how hard they work. I'm like, man, that just doesn't seem right. So I did a little digging because I love this podcast, and I love you, and I love you all. And it turns out that 80 grand is actually for refugee resettlement, for people that come over seeking asylum legally from wherever, and most of the time it's not from Mexico because they don't have that kind of collateral.
Right.
So usually it's from Russia, or a lot of places in the UAE where they're getting abused or have been compromised because they did work for a private contractor or something like that, and now need to relocate to America. So they relocate. It's called a refugee resettlement program, and it does cost about 80 grand for that to happen. That's a tiny number compared to the 4.4 million tax returns filed. This was back in 2015, but there were about 4.5 million tax returns filed to the IRS that did not have Social Security numbers.
And so those were undocumented.
Those are considered, if you don't have a Social Security number, you're undocumented.
Yeah, so we're talking about 4.5 million people a year paying taxes and getting close to no benefits.
Okay, exactly. Thank you for bringing that up. So that 4.4 million garnered about 23 billion in tax revenue. 23 billion. That is times and times over. No, he only wants a fraction of that for
No, he wants 25.
25 billion?
Well,
I think he wanted 5
actually,
billion.
he wants 5 to start, but it's going to be about 21 or so for the whole thing. He thinks,
guy's
even
on-
though the estimates were really like
Listen, I don't want to get too personal.
98.
I've done a lot of recreational drugs in my time, and I don't know what this guy is on. And when I say a lot, I mean more than 0. So I just don't understand how he arrives at some of these figures, because also when these people are paying, when they're paying into taxes and they're like, well, they're going to get our medical. No. If you're undocumented, if you don't have a Social Security number, you're not eligible for Medicare, even though you're paying into it.
right.
You're not eligible for Social Security upon retirement. If they stay over here to retirement age, they're not getting any Social Security checks.
Yeah, so
Because they're
what
undocumented.
happens is you get this disinformation. You get information from people who are telling you, hey, yeah, they're costing your tax money, and they're making it harder for you to get a job, and we're not.
It's just not true.
It's just not true, and I wouldn't have a problem with $5 million for upgraded border security, which meant what will really work will be technology like drones and sensors and other
Thank
things
you for
like that.
saying that. Concrete and steel. What century is this,
more,
dude?
Right, more agents. More agents
Exactly.
that you won't be paying because you're on a shutdown.
Right.
But more agents. And
Yeah.
what the bottom line, and it won't cost a whole lot, is we need better immigration policy.
Exactly.
We need better immigration policy. We've seen over the years that we've been unable to stem the flow.
regardless of the red or blue
Right.
sitting in office.
There are a lot of theories of why the immigration, both legal and illegal, has reduced. One of the theories that rings most true to me is that in the last 10 years, we were recovering from a recession, and the job market sucked.
Right.
So people didn't want to flee here to not get a job and risk their lives and almost die, and some of them do die, and women get raped on the way, and it's
Sure. These
So-
are confabulated statistics, though.
right. So policy,
Yes.
new policy, and that's going to take the Democrats and the Republicans to get together and say, look, we have a leak in the wall, and I'm using wall metaphorically now.
I got you.
We have a leak in the wall, and we've got our finger in it.
Right.
And then another one's opening up, and we'll put a finger in that. We need to come up with something else. And the physical barrier that's going to take, by the way, the best argument I've heard for it, I heard yesterday, and I didn't even think about it. How are you solving a short-term crisis with a wall that's going to take 10 years to build?
At least 10 years, and that's if everything goes well. You know how many lawsuits and stuff will come from mainly Texans
Yeah.
that are like, listen, you're not going to just cut my livelihood in half.
Right, that's the thing. Everybody doesn't have the same view that you think they do.
Well, these are major
hear-
landowners.
Right, you
These
hear
aren't-
people from Texas, and you're like, oh, well, they're from Texas, so they're probably Trump supporters. No,
They're Texans.
they're Texans.
If you've ever known a Texan, they
Yeah.
are Texans
They're
first.
Texans, and
They want to be their own damn
one
country.
one of the biggest things about being a Texan is being a landowner. And if this wall cuts across your property, you may be a patriot, you may be a Trumper, but if it's going to affect the bottom
You
line
don't mess with Texas.
of how you make money or
Exactly.
the aesthetics of your property, you're gonna be like, yeah, you can't build that.
Yeah.
And the government can't just come in and say, yes, you can.
Not in its current state, no.
No.
And even if they, even if they did enact some sort of like, well, we're going to come through here by hell or high water, you'd be surprised at the amount of resistance they get
Right.
from within.
Yeah, so we have this acute problem, and acute tends to be a medical term, but it means right now,
Right.
okay? We have this acute problem, supposedly. I don't think we have an acute problem. I think
Like
we
I
have
said,
I think we have a chronic problem.
We
But we have this
40
acute
minutes away.
problem.
We don't see this crisis.
We have this acute problem, and your solution is to build something that's probably not going to work, that's going to cost us a lot of money. There's going to be a lot of legal and physical challenges
lot
to
of
it,
resources.
and it's going to take about 10 to 12 years to build.
Optimally, 10 to 12 years. You know?
We're not talking about a crisis. We're talking about politics. We're talking about bullshit. We're talking about, and this is where I circle around. Listen, if you think that we need a way, and to the point where there are some of you fucking idiots who donated
Yes.
money to GoFundMe,
Which we will take those monies
Yeah,
and we
we'll
will
take them.
reallocate them.
Yeah. If you think that a physical border will do any good with what the real problems are in this country in three-dimensional space, then you're
Hearsay.
just off your rocker. You're wrong.
Another
I mean,
huge-
There are other things in politics that you can argue about. Whether or not we should spend money on social programs, or we should spend money on the military, or
Right.
that gets into ideology, and there's still some facts there. But
Absolutely.
it's a matter of those are real debates. This is not a real debate.
No.
And what is pissing me off about this not being a real debate, and people knowing it's not a real debate, is that people are not getting paid. Services are not getting rendered,
And we're going to suffer for it.
And we're going to suffer for it. Like, wait, these same people who are arguing for it, probably have income tax refunds coming
Yeah.
in the next month or so.
Yes.
And they might not get them.
Exactly.
Or they might get them in a year. And then maybe they'll give a fuck. And the thing that I keep coming back to,
It's a selfish nature.
the thing that I keep coming back to is if we let this happen, if we let him just continue to stonewall, and the Democrats and the Republicans don't get together,
Right.
because this is a wonderful thing about our system: checks and balances.
Right.
So, right now, the way it stands is you have the Democrats have a majority in the House.
Correct.
Okay. The Republicans have a majority in the Senate. All right. And then you have the president. So, a bill normally starts, especially an appropriations bill, has to start in the House.
Correct.
So any appropriations is anytime we're going to say, hey, we're going to spend X amount of dollars.
And it needs to get ratified.
Right. So it gets voted on, debated, and then finally passes.
Right.
And then it has to go to the other body, which is the Senate, and the Senate has to pass it.
Right.
And then they send it to the president, and the president either signs it
Or
vetoes it, or just tables it, which
Right.
is a tacit veto.
Right.
The way the system works is, with the president at the head, in our current state, because of the political parties being so delineated and set in their ways,
Love that word.
we're not going to be able to get anything done because they don't have enough Democrats in the Senate.
Well, I think there's a
And
bunch of
they don't have enough
weak-willed-
Republicans in the House. So what will happen is they will pass it, he will veto it, and then that's it. But this is the way our system works, is that you can override a veto.
Yes, you can.
And that's what needs to happen. But to override the veto, you need 2/3.
Yes, I remember
And
my
if
AP
you,
history.
to get those
government
2/3, those fuckers have to start talking to each other.
Well, and here's what I was going to get into. I think right now what you're seeing is a lot of kind of cowardly Democrats, or a lot of the Dems are very scared of some of the changes that are coming, specifically with, I'm going to say it, Ocasio-Cortez, her tax on people who make $10 million more. And then Joe Lieberman, who all of a sudden is like back. All of a sudden, I was so happy when he was gone.
Yeah.
The droopy dog of
So I'm not up to speed on this. How did Joe flip flop?
Joe Lieberman.
Again.
I know. Well, he already screwed himself and his party over. Everybody can see through him nowadays. Especially with the ease and speed of technology, we can see who he gets funded by, why he says the things that he does. He was saying that, well, I certainly hope that Cortez is not the future of the Democratic Party, and I honestly don't think she is. Because of the, she was just like, hey, maybe the rich should hate a little more.
Right. Oh, and that's when we got into the discussion of marginal tax rates.
Yeah, that's correct.
And so they were.
And I remember when
Steve
Steve Forbes was talking about a flat tax.
Right.
And that was a huge deal. What was that, in the 96?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And it kind of snapped some people's heads around. You're like, oh wow, there could be. I didn't even know there could be differences in tax rates.
Yeah.
For people of different economic
So
status.
the average tax is you get taxed on X amount of income.
You make X amount, and you get
You get
taxed
paid.
thereof.
Right. Marginal.
Correct.
And David Pakman, you should go to the David Pakman show, and he really, you should follow him on YouTube.
The Pac-Man.
Yeah, he explains this very well. But the bottom line is that marginal tax rates don't tax all of your money.
Right.
Marginal tax rates, when you get above a certain amount, so let's say $50,000 is the threshold.
Right.
And then the next step is
Let's say 80 or 90.
80 or 90. That money between 50 and 80 will get taxed at that higher rate.
Mm-hmm.
But the money from 50 below gets taxed at the lower rate.
So people.
That's how marginal taxes are.
Well, and people can have a livelihood.
And
People-
if you're an accountant or a tax person and I'm completely fucked up, here's the thing. Like we always say, come on and tell me how I'm fucked up. Or at least explain it better.
You can email us, and it's really easy to be on our podcast. It's just having a conversation with a couple dudes.
Yeah.
There happens to be a microphone in front of you, so come on down. We don't
And a
fight
camera.
that hard.
Never.
Did you look at the camera?
Yes, I did.
God darn it, Adrian. What would I tell you day after day? Oh, it's because of you I have no hair. Okay.
It is not.
It is
because of
not.
me.
It's my genetics.
Genetics, baby.
My genetics, baby. Another big misnomer about the whole order fiasco. The crisis.
Right.
You know, I know me and you always go strapped with a fully automatic rifle to work every day because of the crisis day.
Of course.
And you know how many undocumented immigrants are stealing your jobs in the medical field, and mine as a
Daily.
As a professional
Daily.
piece of hipster trash.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite memes is you know, Muhammad the neurologist is not stealing your job there, Joe DeBrummer.
That's phenomenally great. But no, it's the whole, well, the X amount of drugs, including heroin and meth, you know, come through the border every hour of every day. You know, if you were listening to some of this rhetoric from some very scared people, is
Yeah.
what I'm going to call them, whether their fears are warranted or not up to me, but they are filled with fear. And
I've
scared-
already circled around so I can say fucking assholes. But go ahead.
Exactly. But I mean, when an animal is full of fear, whether it's a human or a bear or a squirrel or a chihuahua, they react. They're reactionary when they're filled with fear, and you can't. Fear is entropy. You can't tell what they're going to do next. And that's what scares me most. That's what fills me with fear. Is people filled with fear. Because you're dealing with.
It almost makes me. Our friend John Z is sitting over there, and I know he kind of believes these kind of things, and I would love to ask him about it.
He's dealing with some things with the Packers being in the playoffs. We're gonna wait till the end of football season.
I would love to just kind of like man on the street it and just hear what they think and why they think it and where they're getting their numbers from.
At a quick glance, I can see about 3 people over there that might actually be a good person on the street. But that's okay, you know, and we love them, and we love drinking with them, and we love hanging out. And they let us do our podcast, and they don't threaten to deport us.
Yeah, and again, we're just gonna, you know, here comes my station break.
Right.
Again, thank you to Famous Sam's Golf Links and Cold here at
Oh my
7129
God. Station break, Adrian.
Golf Links Road, and I'm doing this second one especially because Cindy Roberts and Dean Beckwar are taking over.
We can say their names now.
Yes,
it's
we can
official.
Say their names. Say my name. Say my name.
Hey, okay, Adrian.
But
Couldn't imagine.
they have continued the approval that we have to use their space.
So you negotiated a contract.
No, I just asked Cindy if we could do it
We're on.
because she's like a mother figure.
We got like
I love Cindy.
we got like 1 million listeners right now. You gotta say you negotiated the contract. Sounds so much
It's
better.
huge.
It's huge. It's a huge contract.
Also, I wanted to bring up, we have some amazing guests coming on. We have some specials coming on because some of the guests that we're going to be having are in other states.
Thousands of miles away.
Thousands of miles
Brought
away.
to you by the
So
miracle
we'll
of
be doing,
technology.
We'll be doing Skype interviews, and we'll be doing them separately and as specials and put them up.
I'm such an old man. I'm like, what's a Skype? What's this guy? What's this guy?
What's this guy?
What is this on my computer? I've not seen this episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine yet. What is this guy?
I like Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
It's a really good show, actually. Glad
It's
NBC,
hilarious.
glad NBC picked it up.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Andy Samberg actually
and that's
did a
why,
great job.
but that's why it happened because
Well,
Andy Samberg.
yeah.
Because Andy Samberg
He's pretty
has
great.
such a close relationship with NBC because it's Saturday Night Live.
Oh yeah, it's kismet. He's just like, Lorne, can I please have a show? Right?
Yes.
Right. I guess I can do that. You know, Dr. Evil from the Austin Powers movie,
Yes.
which is based off of Lorne Michaels.
Oh, of Lorne Michaels.
Yeah, Michael Myers essentially used Lorne Michaels and did Dr. Evil.
Oh my God.
I guess that's exactly how.
Poor Lorne Michaels.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. He's doing quite well.
Yeah.
Even
And
in
at
the
least
middle.
he's not Les Moonves.
He also brought us.
fucked.
He also brought us Kids in the Hall, which is Canadian for really funny. Circling
I thought-
back around
I
to
thought
the
SCTV.
no, yeah, Second City TV was also great, and that brought us a bunch of funny people, including Dan Aykroyd and Tina Fey. We're talking genres of statistics and information that I am actually really well versed in.
Si, senor.
Useless BS.
Oh, yeah.
Back to drugs.
Okay, back to drugs.
And how so much of them are streaming through the southern border. The DEA itself says it's a very small percentage of opiates that are seized at the border, and most of them are manufactured right here in house.
Yeah.
Amphetamines, and a lot of amphetamines nowadays, and you can look on any DEA website, you can do the research. I'm not going to get that for you, okay? You're on the computer already. You just open up another tab and look it up while we're talking to you. A lot of that methamphetamine actually comes from China in huge cargo ships with stevedores and stuff that are paid off, with Coast Guard that are paid off.
They come into the ports with that?
Absolutely.
Can we put a wall around
Oh,
it?
let's just, I want to wall off the entire goddamn
Can
ocean.
we just put, and then if they drop in by parachute, can we put a roof on the fucking thing
It's a
too?
well-known stat that blue whales bring in more illegal children in their bellies with Jonah. Biblical story.
I just can't with you today. Oh.
They come in, they take our SeaWorld jobs.
So here we go. It's a very similar approach to what I think are the right things to do on the border if you want to control the problems.
Sure.
Like I said, technology, more agents, and policy reform. Well, that's what we do with drugs.
Yeah.
Harm reduction. So harm reduction are programs like they have in San Francisco.
They need them in Seattle and Portland.
Yeah, well, they have. They actually do have them. But San Francisco actually has one in particular that if you are arrested with a small quantity of a narcotic, and we're not talking about marijuana, we're talking about.
No, I didn't assume we were.
No, we're talking about
Hard shit.
methamphetamine, cocaine,
Yeah.
Heroin,
Sure.
pills that you're not supposed to have.
Right.
You are offered either arrest or the harm reduction is we take you to a rehab, we give you job leads, we give you job training. What they do is they invest the money that they would spend on enforcement and prosecution and incarceration on fixing
Rehabilitation.
the problem. If you read Johan Hari's book called Chasing the Scream, it's about the war on drugs, and it's also about how
Chasing the
Scream.
Scream.
Yeah, Chasing the
Screaming.
Scream. Yes, Chasing the Scream by Johan Hari. That's, I believe it's Johan
Johan.
Hari. Johan. If you read that book, he explains it in great detail. First of all, I'm somebody who fought in the war on drugs.
Yes, you did.
And I was duped. We were all duped.
What do you mean? What do you mean duped? Okay, so
Well,
I went through
well,
the
they-
DARE program. Probably right about when you were becoming a cop.
Right. But
I was in
DARE
middle
was
school.
DARE is actually a good program because DARE was stopping the problem before it happens.
Well, that's the thing. I actually
That's not
thought
what
it was
I'm
a fun
talking
program.
about. I'm talking about the fact that we were rolling around in a van and jumping out onto corners and violating people's Fourth Amendment rights, and just whoever ran.
Fourth Amendment rights are a right to search and seizure, by the way. If
Whoever
you,
ran, that's the person we grabbed, and we searched them and found
You
drugs.
give us
and
probable
threw them in jail.
cause, man. You ran.
Yeah.
Oh, like, yeah, bunch of
And we did a lot of
motherfuckers.
other things. We did a lot of other things.
Why'd you run? Well, there's a bunch
You know,
of motherfuckers in a van coming out and chasing me. So yeah, I ran.
a lot of citizens died. A lot of law enforcement officers died.
Yeah, sounds big
A
grim.
lot of people on both sides of the border died, and it was for nothing because we still have a problem. But one of the
I'm not
one
surprised,
of the things
honestly.
that has been shown to work is harm reduction. Another example of harm reduction is, I think it's Sweden, but this is exactly what they do. They catch you with heroin or
Something you ain't supposed to
let's just say
have.
heroin.
Okay.
They catch you with heroin.
That's
And
the
they
big
say,
one nowadays.
Okay, this is what you're going to do. Are you addicted to heroin? Yes, I'm addicted to heroin.
There's no casual, like, just on the weekend.
Right. Well, that's actually not true, and the book kind of explains it.
Oh,
as
okay.
well.
I'd be interested to read this book.
But are you addicted to heroin? Yes. So this is what you do. You're not getting it off the street anymore. If you continue to get it off the street, we're going to arrest you and put you in jail.
Okay.
So, there are no pushovers.
Okay.
But at the same time, what they'll say is, or you can have this alternative. Every day, you will wake up, and if you have to be to work at 9, that means you have to get here at 7:30. And you come into a facility, and that facility has a nurse and doctors.
A controlled environment.
A controlled environment. It has nurses and a doctor, and it has pure heroin,
Wow.
and it's dosed out in the right dosages.
To wean you up.
And it's not even about weaning. This is the very interesting part.
Really?
So you can have every day as much heroin as you want up to the point where it will kill you. So they won't let you kill yourself, but they will let you have as much heroin as you want, and they will either start an IV or establish some kind of sterile way to administer it. They will administer it to you.
Yes.
They will give you a period of time to get yourself together physically, and then you leave and you go to work and you do it again the next day.
So,
And there is no restriction on how much you get, except for they're not going to let you have a lethal dose.
right. And
But-
Keith Richards isn't allowed around there. They're
No,
like, no.
Keith Richards can come into. I don't think he's a Swedish citizen. So, but here's the thing.
I don't know that
And
for a
again,
fact.
I'm not sure it's Sweden, but it's definitely one of those
Scandinavian countries.
Scandinavian countries.
They got their shit
But
together.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. When they poll the people that use this service, nobody tells them to leave.
Sure.
They voluntarily wean over time.
They want to be a productive
They
member of
want
their
to be
society.
a productive member of society, and they are hooked both psychologically
Chemically.
and chemically to this chemical,
Yeah.
and they need it.
Yeah.
That's harm reduction,
Okay.
and it works.
Can there be a harm reduction in America for Americans for Krispy Kremes and McDonald's burgers?
Somebody bring me a donut.
There needs to be, because it's that's an amazing program they have right there.
Well, actually, there is harm
I was-
reduction for it. It's called CrossFit Purgatory.
Exactly. Go on over and see Corbin Bradley at CrossFit Purgatory. He'll get your ass in
Broadway
shape.
and Palo Verde,
Broadway and Palo Verde.
not Pantano.
No, the Pantano. I don't even know what that means. Like a bunch of pants. Chasing the Screen by Johan is a good book we got to look at.
Yeah. Please check that out.
And when
And
you were
so-
talking
and-
about
and-
narcotics,
And I
people,
will
go ahead.
admit that the drug problem in America is different. We are a larger country. We have a lot more moving pieces.
much
we have
more
a system.
anomalous over
We have
here.
a system of government where states basically run.
State constitution matters.
Well, no, states actually run most of the goods and services that you deal
Well,
with.
state funding.
Not just state funding, state law.
Well, yes.
Most law is state law.
Yes.
Okay, the federal government gets involved in, like interstate traffic and, taxes
Yes.
and immigration and that type of thing. But for the most part, you have 50 different states with 50 different rules.
Right.
So harm reduction will work in some of those communities,
And not.
and others, what it's going to take is,
Cracking some skulls.
cracking some skulls and putting
So
people
what
away.
you're telling me what is going to work in Boca Raton or Palm Springs isn't going to work in Detroit or
It depends on where. It really depends
South
on where.
Philly?
It depends on where. It depends on the drugs that's are predominant in that area.
Did you ever arrest anybody for pot?
Yeah,
Why? No, I'm just kidding.
because I was brainwashed.
No, but it was your
Because
job.
I was brainwashed,
So,
and no, I will tell you, I believed because
Right.
these people of authority.
what kind of time frame are we talking about? Like what? I don't want to date
19.
you.
You can date me. I'm 51.
Too old for me.
80.
Oh, honey
80
pie, climb that ladder.
like 89 to like 96.
Okay.
Late 80s.
So throughout the 90s,
Early to mid,
yeah,
early to mid 90s.
the Seinfeld era.
The crack of that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's boy, was that a thing, huh?
And we were taught from credible sources, which is what I believe in. I've always believed.
Yeah, marijuana
in.
was a gateway drug.
Yeah, that marijuana was a gateway drug.
Not PBR,
Right.
not Budweiser.
And then what happens even more is it becomes a kind of like a siege mentality. So it's like
Explain what do you mean? What do you mean siege mentality?
you go out every night and you're supposed to accomplish.
I'm having a lot of fun today.
Right. You go out every day or night and you're supposed to accomplish crime reduction, and you know some of that is traffic and some of it is.
Would you say there was a quota?
No, and I will tell you how that
Okay.
I
It's a huge
actually
thing
explained
with
that
a couple of us.
and we're not going to talk about it on this podcast.
No.
But I actually explained how there are quotas, but there aren't.
And tune in next week for that discussion, or week after next. But we will touch back on
We'll talk
that.
about it at
We'll
some
circle back around.
But so you'd go out with your partner, or sometimes by yourself, but you're with a group we call the platoon, with a group of men and women who work together, you know,
A squad.
day after day after day after day.
Right.
And you go out and you run into these people with problems. And let's face it, if you watch Cops and you watch Live PD, you know, many people who are laymen, who aren't civilians, who aren't there, are screaming at the TV, why don't you just do what they're saying?
Right.
Why don't you? Why it would be a lot easier. And so that was our everyday lives. And a lot of it had to do with the drug trade.
Sure.
So drug trade bad.
Right.
Drug dealing bad.
Guy smoking
drug
a
possession
joint.
bad.
Guy smoking a joint.
Bad. Standing on the corner, hanging out with your friends, probably selling drugs.
Bad.
That's what gets beaten into your psyche.
Was there any kind of racial profiling?
Well, see, here's the thing. I worked in Wilmington, Delaware, and Wilmington, Delaware is one of those places that would be very foreign to people from Tucson.
Really? Why
because
so?
The majority of the population is black.
Okay. I've been to Baltimore and I've been to Delaware. And
Right. So
my friends.
racial profiling wasn't really a problem because you walked up and it was a black guy.
Okay, but
And it
so
was
maybe
probably a
not
black
racial.
guy walking up to a black guy. So
So what about profiling in terms of like body language, clothes? I mean, obviously you get
those
taught
are all
to
good
like,
tools.
yeah,
Those are
really,
all good tools. Yeah.
really.
I mean, you know, it's that's how.
And there was some gang violence, you know, spiking back in the late '80s, early '90s as well. From what I
Yeah,
remember.
Delaware was kind of weird where
that on the West Coast?
Apparently they have them now, but there weren't a lot of gangs
Really?
when I was working.
At
with
least
the
not
police officer.
not to the level where it'd be causing you a lot of trouble.
They had some Jamaican drug posses,
Sure.
they called them, which is basically a gang.
Yeah,
But
probably
for
down
the
from
most
Boston.
part, you had small to large organized crime,
Okay.
but it wasn't based on the type of gang stuff that we see out here.
It wasn't
where-
necessarily
right. They weren't recruiting. They weren't
young,
recruiting,
influential,
Right.
right, easily influenced.
You know,
youth
not that
and
they
stuff.
didn't use those kids.
No,
They
but you're
used
talking
those
about
kids
some
as
guys that
rabbits.
already had money that were using younger people to deliver this.
Yeah. Oh, so
destroy
it was
that.
always like the low man on the totem pole. We used to, you know, tell these guys.
Did you ever
we
get
used
anybody to snitch on a bigger thing?
Of course, everybody has.
Excellent.
Everybody
Excellent.
has confidential.
I can't wait for your book.
But
Names
yeah.
and dates, the names and locations have been changed to protect the innocent.
there are no innocent.
I think that's true.
So no, I mean, we would tease the guys on the corner that were actually selling the drugs,
Yeah.
whether we could catch them or not, because it would be like, you know, I've been out here for like 10 hours.
Right.
Were out here before me. You're going to be out here after I'm gone if
Right.
you don't get locked up
Right.
or shot. You're probably making about $3 an hour.
Yeah. And you know that was below minimum wage in in '90, I think.
Yeah,
think minimum
I mean,
wage in '90 was about $4 an hour.
You know, so but anyway, that was part of.
And
of
you
the
don't get
mentality.
any benefits package.
No, you don't.
There's no benefits.
And you're probably going to need health care for the holes you're going to get in.
or yeah, the mental mental
you know,
cost.
the things we were doing were not morally wrong.
Right.
At least the things I was doing.
Right.
But the things, they were good cops out there doing the best they could do with the system that they were given and the information they were given. And it was up to the people above us, the Bill Clintons of the world.
Sure.
It was up
Oh,
to
the guy who brought up the whole 3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah. It was
everybody-
up to the people above us to say, hey, you know what, this isn't working.
Right.
And
I want to circle back around to that, but yes,
Yeah.
it's not working.
And it took us, and there are still people who don't believe, you know. And I think it's a pride thing. It's like, well, no, you know, I did a lot of good as a police officer. Yeah, you probably did some good, but for the most part, you were spinning in circles.
What I've noticed,
You were
and
spinning in
and
circles.
you're not my first cop friend, and you won't be my last, hopefully, is the presence. When there's a police presence, people feel safer, and that's what I think most civilians who have either not served in the police or public sector or maybe military, for as much as, you know, they bitch and moan about, like, you know, brutality and stuff, overall the capability of calling someone to help
Yeah, well,
makes
America,
people a lot more
Americans
placid.
have no idea how good you have it.
No, absolutely.
You can pick up the phone, and now you don't have to even be near a phone that's in a wall
Oh yeah,
with
one
a
of them,
line
one of them
connected
electrical
to
type cords going
right.
to a pole
that
outside.
you have a phone in your hand,
Right.
and you can dial 3 digits and get police service, fire service, emergency medical services right to your doorstep.
You say the right
or
words, you
to-
can even get black water if you say the right phrases.
I'm not even sure what you're referencing.
Me neither.
Maybe the blacklist. Maybe if I could get
I'm
Red
sorry.
Reddington in here,
I'm
that'd be
sorry. I
great.
meant whitewater
Love James
rafting.
Spader.
Meant
No,
whitewater
but you
rafting.
we can, you know,
He is good.
right now, you start having chest pain.
Are you about
They
to
would
punch
be
me? I got my
here.
phone ready.
They would be here in 4 minutes,
I know.
and they would fix your chest pain. Save your life if you were having a heart attack, or tell you ate too many,
I hope
ate
Steve-O
too many
doesn't read.
tacos.
I hope it wouldn't be Steve-O that showed up.
Tacos that were pizza.
Like I said, I'm hipster trash. My shirt doesn't need to make sense to anybody.
But I
Circling
just-
back around to
Yeah.
what the real problem is, and let's take a really wide turn and come all the way back to Mexico. I've always said this since I've been of voting age, and I realized
They let you vote.
I know. I never got convicted of a felony. I have been arrested 3 times in my life. All of them are misdemeanors. One was disorderly conduct in public. And,
We don't even know this.
Olympia. I know, it's a really funny story, actually. The arresting cop was really cool, actually. He was a really cool guy. And I deserved it. I was being an asshole. And sometimes when you're grown up, you gotta go to detention.
It's true.
You know, you gotta go and say, no, are we gonna do that again? No, officer. Really sorry. Here's $1,500. I've always been of the mind to say, because I grew up with Latinos most of my life. I've spent here in southern Arizona, and a lot of people I love dearly, and some of them are no longer here with us, and they're from, they have lineage in Mexico, and the way they came over here might not have been exactly legal, but I don't think that all the original settlers and people from, the 16 to 1800s,
Right. We don't, I mean, we don't,
if you landed here, good job, here's a
we want to
farm.
get into the, if we wanted to get
So-
real moralistic about it,
Right.
we'd go back and be like, really, this isn't even your fucking country.
Well, yeah,
this
and-
isn't my country.
And absolutely, but how far back do you want to
Right.
go
So I
to
mean, and
patch
that,
up bad blood?
and when you do
but the
that,
thing is,
it's kind of one of those logical fallacies.
Yeah.
All the time. It's a bad argument.
no, I know, but it's a great way to pass the time, Adrian. These people, some of them are religious, some of them aren't, but they are very family-oriented culture. They love their family. Why are some of them risking their lives and the lives of their children, the lives of their abuelos and abuelitas, or their why are they willing to risk something that means so much to them to come over here? What's from stopping us as one of the greatest countries that have ever been in the entire goddamn universe, according to
Everybody ever.
according to us?
Yeah, according to us.
Why can't we go down there and facilitate a renaissance in Mexico to where they don't want to leave because they also love their family, they love their culture, they love where they're from.
Well, I mean,
Why can't we go down there and help them out
I
and
don't know if that's
make
a
it better
solution.
down there?
I don't
I'm
know,
not saying
because
invasive.
we
I'm not
have
going
our
down
own-
there and saying with start goose stepping, in a sovereign nation.
No, but I think what it comes down to is the way you solve problems is you look at them from the big picture and you say, what's the problem? How can we solve it with a minimal impact on our freedoms? Because that's what's at stake for me. Building this wall, and this is where I'll get to the moral implications of it.
Okay.
Building this wall on the border. Let's say it was possible, which it's not.
Let's
it's
say
not. It's not possible
for the
in
sake
three-dimensional
of-
sense.
for the sake
But
of
let's say it
argument,
was Star
let's
Trek
say
and you could put up a fucking force field.
And let's say it can happen within 5 years.
Yeah, in 5 years you can put up a fucking force field. It's a dome.
Right.
It protects us from all
The dome.
all the people and bad things and everything that goes bump in
Because
the
walled
night.
off countries have the best things happening
Right.
inside of them.
Right. We're the same, and especially conservatives are the same ones. Like, yeah, Reagan made him tear down that wall. What happened to that?
Fear.
What happened to
fear?
that?
Fear, Adrian. It's the
I
fear
just-
of being a minority.
I'm gonna finish unpacking this and wrap it up with. We may have disagreements about a lot of different things when it comes to politics, but what I want everyone to start doing is start talking to each other and start using the Socratic method. And if you don't know what it is, look it the fuck up.
Socrates.
And
He was actually a very
realize-
positive, optimistic guy.
realize that, and again, this is why I like my friend Brian Wright. He's a conservative. When he comes at me with like legitimate facts and legitimate data.
Sure.
And we still disagree, but I can say, wow, I didn't know that.
Sure.
To the point where now that he's a medical student, he's for a single payer system, or at least something close to it. Where before, if you would have asked him, he would have had all these arguments as to why not.
Sure.
But now that he's gained some more experience,
get a different data packet.
he's actually evolved in his thinking. So here's the thing: there is no crisis on the border.
Nope.
For the most part, you are more likely, statistically and realistically and truthfully, you are more likely to have a crime committed against you by an American citizen
Absolutely.
who was born here, who probably looks exactly like you,
Yeah.
because that's who commits crimes.
Yes.
You commit crimes against the people that you live with. So not only domestically, but like you steal from your neighbors, you steal from the guy 2 streets over,
Right.
and he probably looks just like you.
Yeah. You saying we
So-
all look the same to you?
Yeah. You. So
I agree.
the letters are coming. So I want you to at least on this one issue, if you've listened to this podcast, stop it. Stop it.
Don't stop listening to the
There's no
podcast.
crisis. There's no crisis on the border. We don't need a wall. We do need border security. We do need new policy. But most of all, we need to open the fucking government back up, which means
Absolutely.
get off your ass and stop arguing with me or any of your other liberal friends, and liberals stop arguing with your conservative friends, and get on the phone with your congressman, your governor, your senator, your representatives, and say, look, we don't know what you're going to do or how you're going to do it, but you're going to open this government, or we're going to vote you the fuck out of office next time you're up. And if that's too long, maybe we'll just come up there and grab you.
Yeah, the guillotines are being sharpened, man. What can I tell you?
The way I feel about certain politicians in America, and I know the Secret Service is coming now.
We'd love
Yeah.
to have you on the podcast, Secret
Yeah.
Service, because you know what? Those guys are on the government payroll too.
Yeah, and they're not getting paid.
They're human beings,
They're not getting paid.
but they're human beings. I know that they get trained extraordinarily well,
So, yeah,
but they're still humans.
There are a host of politicians on the face of this earth that the earth would be better off without them. So
Couldn't agree more.
let's stop at least on this one issue, because this one issue is a non-issue.
It's not.
It's a non-issue. We can talk.
It's a
about
fallacy.
It. We can fix immigration policy. I don't have a problem with that. We can fix border security. I don't have a problem with that. But let's stop with the false crisis. Let's stop with the bullshit. Let's reopen the government and let's find better ways to solve problems.
What I've told so many of my friends who sometimes reach across the aisle. Most of the time, we just kind of agree on stuff like sports, but we all have a lot more in common as average citizens who make under, let's say, $4 million a year annually.
Yeah.
But if you make under $4 million, and I'm not kidding, if you make under $4 million a year, you probably have more in common with average people.
Yeah.
Than you do uncommon.
Because that's the thing. If you look at your average low-level millionaire,
Yes.
they're hustling to keep that.
They're
going.
working their ass. They're
hustling to
they
keep
have
that
a
going.
shit ton of
like
expenditure.
it's not like they're sitting back going, I got $4 million in the bank, I'll be fine.
I
Not
have
if you're 30.
I have a very popular, it's not mine. It's been said once or twice before. They're rich, and when I say that, I'm not talking about the people who are business owners that have a couple million. Because, like you said, if you have a couple million and you didn't, it's not from a trust fund or something like that. Like you said, you had to work your ass off to get that.
Yeah.
And I applaud you for that. And in that specific instance that is kind of a trickle down thing where they are paying their construction crew, they are paying their restaurant staff or whatever it is you happen to be doing. When I talk about eat the rich, I mean the hyper wealthy, the hundreds of millions where people don't have an idea of the value of time.
If we band together like we should, we're going to find that our common enemy, and I hate to say enemy because I don't want to have animus to people just because they happen to have more than
Well,
me.
of course not.
But
That's not a jealousy
Our
thing.
common enemy are the people that are lobbying and basically buying our congressmen and representatives that we voted to do a job.
Right.
We voted for them to do a job.
To represent us and our needs.
And they're not representing us.
No.
They're representing corporations and
Now the Secret Service is on their way.
no, the Secret Service is like, yeah, they're probably right about that because I've seen it.
Right.
But me saying that there are some politicians that we'd be better off without having on the earth, yeah, I'm going to get a visit.
We didn't mean anything mean by that, by the way. We just meant that we want them to go with Elon Musk.
You can come talk to me.
Moonshot.
I am not threatening anybody. I don't have the capability to threaten anybody.
I just thought you meant more space travel funding. What my knee-jerk reaction was.
The bottom line is we're looking at this completely backwards.
There is no
at
crisis.
least on this one issue, there's no crisis. Get off it and get on the phone and call your representatives.
Well, and do some research. If me and you, who have you have a full-time job, I have like 4 part-time jobs, which equals up to full-time
and a half.
Yeah. If me and you and I, sorry, my mom's listening and she hates improper grammar. So you and she's great. If you and I can cobble together some info and make I gotta say, a pretty decent podcast this week. You at home, while you're listening to this, while you're, don't rewatch that episode of, I don't know, what do people watch? Modern Family, All in the Family, whatever you
just
watch.
watch Star Trek, so I don't know.
So instead of watching that one where Picard plays the penny whistle again.
Oh my God, Inner Light. It's a great episode.
I knew you'd know the exact episode. Or me for watching Doctor Who again. I mean, yeah, Dalek's a Dalek. You can still keep it on, but also peruse through some data. There is a lot of actual information that you can get from government websites, from your own state, wherever you're listening to us from. You can log on to your state government and contact. It's so easy nowadays. When I was a kid, and we would write our congressman for a history class or something like that. Oh, you had to actually write with a damn pen and then put it in an envelope. And
in college, I actually had I had to write a paper about NAFTA, and I ended up talking to Joe Biden's office when he was a senator, and it took several weeks.
Of course.
Mailing letters back and forth.
Snail mail.
Yeah, but I actually got an interview per se. I didn't get to sit down in front of him, but I got to send him questions to get answers that probably came from the staff.
Well,
but still,
They're highly trained.
Yeah.
That's still pretty cool. That's a good get.
You know, but that's how you had to do it.
Now, you can-
you
you can-
swipe up and there you go.
You can do
Here's the
it while
information.
you're at the dispensary, waiting for your vape pen. You can, or while you're in the drive-thru, or while you're down here at Famous Sam's at Golf Links and Cove watching some great playoff NFL action. I'm so sorry, and you know this is a news program, and so we end with sports. We didn't do weather because everybody knows about Arizona weather. It snowed here for 2 days, and
And everybody freaked out.
They are beautiful photos, though. I will tell you that.
Whatever.
It's very pretty looking.
Bad weather is always bad weather.
But it's so pretty looking. Adrian, saguaros with snow.
Yeah, and there's people who have to live with that.
You don't think that's just gorgeous?
No.
Why not?
I think about the homeless guy who got snowed.
Damn it, Adrian.
I think about the person who had to drive out in it, and maybe they're a millionaire, but they don't know how to drive in snow and they wreck their car and they die. That's who I think of. Bad weather's always bad weather.
Well, you should be
I'm
more
the Grinch.
equatorial. You can't move much more south without going to Mexico. Okay, so you'll be the first person to tell us about the crisis.
The last time I was in Mexico, and I can't get into too many details, but it
Oh,
was
dear.
kind of like a reversal of what's going on here. And
You
they were
brought
like,
the pain?
No, I went down there on some kind of,
Retreat.
Well, I
Retreat.
can't say if it was for work or for pleasure, but I went down there and they were like, yeah, you're not coming in with your luggage.
Right.
They didn't like my luggage and it was scary.
You're like, who do you think you are? You're like, I'm an
Yeah.
ex-cop and I'm a medical professional.
Yeah.
You're like, exactly. The hell? Our dog doesn't even know what to hit on first on this.
Yeah, my luggage was not making them happy. But yeah, so I'm probably going to move to Mexico.
Okay. Well, we're ending with sports. We got the time of this recording. We got some playoffs happening in the American Football League. The American Football
It's
Club.
the National Football.
Yeah, but it's American football. Football is.
There's just football.
No, it's.
There's football and then there's soccer.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong. Oh, you're so American right now. So, your Steelers, your beloved Steelers,
They're done.
were not able to do anything. So, who are your projections? What's your?
I think it's an all LA Super Bowl.
Really?
I think it's
West
the
Coast.
Rams versus the Chargers.
Really think that?
I think it's the Rams versus the Chargers.
Oh, good. I'm hoping
and
LA.
that's a little wishful thinking because when you come to the playoffs, for me,
Yes.
I'm a real NFL fan, so I don't have a second team, or third, or fourth, or fifth team,
A real NFL fan. Okay.
and I'm not going to root for some other team for some random reason. Like, for example, I lived very close to and went to school in Philadelphia. I'm not rooting for the fucking Eagles. Fuck the Eagles.
Right.
Okay?
I'm sorry. I just like liking things.
Yeah, that's fine. But I would root for the Eagles.
You're
if
so
they're-
dismissive,
I
man.
would root for the Eagles if they're playing the Cowboys, and for me, it's about legacy.
Oh, okay.
The Steelers are the only team with 6 Super Bowls. The only team with 6 Super
You're
Bowls.
so well put together. It infuriates me.
Right now, you've got the Patriots who have 5,
Right.
and you have the Cowboys who have 5.
Sure.
So my first concern was Baltimore, who I hate because they're in our
Oh, they're
division.
gone.
I wanted them out.
Oh, they got eaten pretty hard the first half. They tried to make a go of it the second half, but
So they're gone.
Yes.
I'm happy about that.
Yes.
So the only 2 problems for me legacy-wise are Dallas and New England.
So I had no idea you were so filled with pride.
I bleed black and gold, right, brother.
I get it. I honestly am glad that you think it's going to be an LA series because LA needed help. They didn't
And
really have
I
anything.
wouldn't mind if the Colts went pretty far because my friend Mike Mitchell plays for them. So
And LA's been
Colts.
looking for a break. They hardly got anything going on in LA. They needed
oh
another
yeah,
sports
because there's
team.
nothing.
They needed
It's
another
like a
sports team. They needed
desert, desolate wasteland out in the
a
middle.
lot of naked people in LA from like see.
A lot of good-looking naked
Yeah, exactly.
versus the naked people you see around here, where you're just like, no, why are you
Yeah.
naked?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We need a wall. Just kidding.
I think we should just put a wall around him.
No.
That would cost about
Listen.
like $200.
And I'm going to get up and man the camera here so you can do our sign off. But I do think there should be walls, but it should be around flat earthers and anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
Just wall them up and let Darwin sort it out. All right, buddy, you sign us off.
Yeah, and I'm going to end the podcast as I always end the podcast. With a sneeze, apparently. With I love you, Tracy.